The morning sun painted Rio de Janeiro in golden hues as Prince William's private jet descended toward the Galeão International Airport. Inside the cabin, the Duke of Cambridge adjusted his tie and looked out the window at the sprawling city below. Christ the Redeemer stood tall on Corcovado Mountain, arms outstretched as if welcoming him to Brazil's most famous city. William had traveled many places as a member of the British royal family, but this trip felt different. He wasn't just visiting as a prince or a future king. Today, he was here as a passionate advocate for environmental conservation and social change. The city of Rio had invited him to receive honorary citizenship, a gesture that would culminate in Mayor Eduardo Paes presenting him with the symbolic keys to the city. As the plane touched down, William could see crowds gathering behind the airport barriers. Brazilian flags waved alongside Union Jacks, and people held signs with messages of welcome in both Portuguese and English. The warmth of the Brazilian people was already evident, even from his airplane window. His private secretary, James, briefed him on the day's schedule one final time. The ceremony would take place at the iconic City Hall in the heart of Rio, followed by visits to several community projects that aligned with William's charitable interests. But first, there would be the traditional welcome at the airport, where local dignitaries waited to greet the prince. The aircraft door opened, and William stepped into the humid Brazilian air. The temperature was a stark contrast to the cool London weather he had left behind just hours earlier. Immediately, the sounds of Rio enveloped him. The distant rhythm of samba music, the chatter of excited crowds, and the ever-present sound of traffic from the busy city beyond the airport. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell, Britain's representative to Brazil, approached with a warm smile. Behind her stood several Brazilian officials, including representatives from the mayor's office who would escort William throughout his visit. The formalities were brief but cordial, with each official expressing their excitement about the prince's presence in their city. "Your Royal Highness," Ambassador Mitchell said as they walked toward the waiting convoy of vehicles, "the people of Rio have been preparing for this visit for months. You'll find that their enthusiasm for the royal family runs very deep here in Brazil." William nodded, already feeling the infectious energy of the city. Even during the short walk from the aircraft to the cars, he could hear the cheers from the crowds gathered outside the airport perimeter. Security was tight, but the atmosphere was celebratory rather than tense. The convoy began its journey into the city, and William watched through tinted windows as Rio unfolded before him. The contrast was striking. Gleaming skyscrapers stood next to colorful favelas that climbed the hillsides like vibrant tapestries. Street vendors sold fresh fruit and cold drinks to pedestrians who seemed oblivious to the royal motorcade passing by. Children played soccer in every available space, their laughter carrying over the sound of the engines. "The mayor is particularly excited about today's ceremony," explained Dr. Carlos Ribeiro, the city's protocol officer who sat across from William in the limousine. "He sees your visit as recognition of Rio's efforts to become a more sustainable and inclusive city. Your work with environmental causes has inspired many of our local initiatives." William learned that Mayor Eduardo Paes had been working tirelessly to transform Rio. After the challenges of hosting the Olympics and World Cup, the city had focused on long-term improvements rather than just temporary showcase projects. New recycling programs, urban reforestation efforts, and community development projects were changing neighborhoods across the city. As they drove through the Santa Teresa neighborhood, William noticed the blend of old and new that characterized Rio. Colonial architecture sat alongside modern developments, and street art covered many walls with messages of hope, social justice, and environmental awareness. The creativity and resilience of the Cariocas, as Rio's residents are known, was evident everywhere. The convoy made an unscheduled stop at a red light, and William watched a group of children playing in a small park. One little girl, no more than 6 years old, noticed the official cars and began waving enthusiastically. Her joy was infectious, and soon several other children joined her, pressing their faces against the park fence and waving at the mysterious convoy. William asked his security team if he could lower the window slightly. The head of security hesitated, but agreed when he saw the prince's genuine desire to connect with the children. As the window came down just a few inches, the children's excitement multiplied. They began chanting Principe, Principe, having somehow realized that royalty was passing through their neighborhood. The light turned green, and the convoy moved on, but the moment stayed with William. This was why he loved traveling and meeting people from different cultures. Despite the barriers of language and circumstance, human connection transcended everything else. Those children didn't care about royal protocol or diplomatic formalities. They simply saw someone who acknowledged them and responded with pure joy. The route to City Hall took them past some of Rio's most famous landmarks. Copacabana Beach stretched endlessly to their left, with its distinctive black and white wave-patterned sidewalks and golden sand dotted with beachgoers. The iconic beach volleyball courts were busy with players who seemed to defy gravity with their athletic moves. The beach culture here is truly something special, Dr. Ribeiro explained, noticing William's interest. It's not just recreation. It's a way of life that brings people together regardless of their social or economic background. Rich and poor, young and old, everyone comes to the beach. William could see the truth in that observation. The beach was indeed a democratic space where expensive bikinis and worn-out swim shorts shared the same sand, where business executives played volleyball alongside street vendors, and where children from favelas built sandcastles next to tourists from around the world. The convoy then passed through the historic center of Rio, where colonial buildings told the story of Brazil's complex past. The architecture reflected the influences of Portuguese colonizers, African slaves, and indigenous peoples who had shaped the city's character over centuries. Street performers entertained crowds with capoeira demonstrations, their movements blending martial arts with dance in a uniquely Brazilian art form. As they approached City Hall, the crowds grew larger and more organized. Local schools had brought their students to witness the historic ceremony, and many held handmade signs welcoming the prince. Teachers struggled to maintain order as excited children pointed at the approaching motorcade, but their enthusiasm was exactly what William had hoped to encounter. The City Hall building itself was an impressive example of Brazilian architecture, with its classical columns and elegant stonework. Brazilian and British flags hung side by side from the building's facade, symbolizing the friendship between the two nations. A red carpet led from the street to the main entrance, lined with honor guard from both the Brazilian military and the local police force. Mayor Eduardo Paes waited at the top of the steps, flanked by city councilors and other municipal officials. His broad smile was visible even from a distance, and his excitement about the ceremony was evident in his animated conversations with the officials around him. This was clearly a proud moment for the mayor, who had worked hard to bring international recognition to his city's efforts at social and environmental improvement. As William's car came to a stop at the base of the steps, he took a deep breath and prepared for what he knew would be a meaningful ceremony. The keys to the city weren't just a symbolic gesture. They represented trust, friendship, and shared commitment to making the world a better place. The car door opened, and William stepped out to thunderous applause from the assembled crowd. Children waved small British and Brazilian flags, while adults held up smartphones to capture the historic moment. The prince paused at the bottom of the steps, acknowledging the crowd with waves and smiles before beginning his ascent to meet Mayor Paes. Each step up the City Hall stairs brought William closer to a moment that would symbolize the deep friendship between Britain and Brazil. The ceremony would be brief, but its significance would resonate far beyond this single day in Rio de Janeiro. As he climbed those steps, William could feel the weight of expectation and the warmth of genuine welcome from a city that had opened its heart to him. The mayor descended a few steps to meet William halfway, a gesture that photographers captured as a symbol of mutual respect and equality. Their handshake was firm and accompanied by genuine smiles that spoke of shared values and common purpose. In that moment, with the Christ the Redeemer statue watching over them and the sounds of a vibrant city rising from the streets below, two leaders connected across cultural and geographical boundaries. Your Royal Highness, Mayor Paes said in carefully practiced English, welcome to our marvelous city. Today, Rio de Janeiro embraces you as one of our own. William's response was warm and heartfelt. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm truly honored to be here and deeply moved by the welcome you've given me. Rio's beauty and spirit are even more magnificent than I had imagined. As they walked up the remaining steps together, surrounded by officials and security personnel, the crowd's cheers grew louder. This was just the beginning of a day that would showcase the best of Brazilian hospitality and the prince's genuine appreciation for the culture and people of Rio de Janeiro. Inside the Grand Hall of Rio de Janeiro's City Hall, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. The ornate chamber, with its high ceilings decorated with intricate moldings and crystal chandeliers, had witnessed many important moments in the city's history, but few as significant as this ceremony honoring Prince William. Local dignitaries filled the elegant wooden chairs arranged in precise rows facing a decorated platform. Representatives from various community organizations, environmental groups, and cultural institutions have been invited to witness this historic moment. The diversity of the audience reflected Rio's rich social fabric. Business leaders sat next to social workers, artists mingled with scientists, and community organizers shared space with university professors. Mayor Eduardo Paes stood behind an ornate podium, adjusting his tie nervously as he reviewed his speech notes one final time. This ceremony meant more to him than just another diplomatic event. For months, his administration had worked to demonstrate that Rio was more than just beautiful beaches and carnival celebrations. The city was tackling serious challenges with innovative solutions, and having Prince William recognize these efforts felt like international validation of their hard work. Distinguished guests, fellow cariokas, and Your Royal Highness, Mayor Paes began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's excellent acoustics. Today we gather to celebrate not just a friendship between our nations, but a shared commitment to building a better world for future generations. Prince William sat in an ornate chair to the side of the podium, listening intently as the mayor spoke in both Portuguese and English, ensuring that everyone present could understand the significance of the moment. Simultaneous translation was provided through headphones for international media representatives who had traveled to cover the event. The mayor's speech painted a picture of Rio's transformation over the past decade. He spoke about the city's efforts to clean up Guanabara Bay, the massive urban reforestation project that had added thousands of trees to neighborhoods across the metropolitan area, and the innovative recycling programs that had turned waste management into community enterprise opportunities. But perhaps most importantly, Mayor Paes continued, we have learned that environmental protection and social justice go hand in hand. You cannot have a clean city without caring for all its people, and you cannot build strong communities without respecting the natural environment that sustains them. These words resonated deeply with William, who had long advocated for exactly this kind of integrated approach to social and environmental challenges. His own charitable work through the Royal Foundation had consistently emphasized that conservation efforts must include local communities as partners rather than treating them as obstacles to overcome. The mayor then invited Dr. Maria Santos, director of Rio's Department of Environment, to speak about the specific programs that had caught Prince William's attention and led to this visit. Dr. Santos, a passionate environmentalist who had dedicated her career to urban sustainability, approached the podium with visible emotion. Your Royal Highness, she began, when we learned of your interest in our work, we were deeply honored. Your support for environmental causes around the world has inspired many of us here in Rio. Today, we want to show you that inspiration travels both ways. Your example has helped motivate our efforts to create positive change. She described a community-based conservation program in the Tijuca National Park, where former residents of informal settlements have been trained as environmental educators and park guides. Instead of simply relocating people, the city had found ways to include them in conservation efforts, creating jobs while protecting one of the world's largest urban forests. The presentation included a short video showing children from various Rio neighborhoods participating in tree planting ceremonies, beach cleanup initiatives, and environmental education programs. William watched with obvious interest as young people explained in simple but powerful terms why they cared about protecting their city's natural beauty. One particularly moving segment featured teenagers from Rocinha, Brazil's largest favela, who had created an urban garden project that provided fresh vegetables for their community while also serving as an outdoor classroom for younger children. Their pride in their accomplishment was evident as they showed cameras around their green oasis nestled among the densely packed homes of the hillside community. These young people understand something that took many of us years to learn, Dr. Santos explained. Environmental protection isn't something that happens somewhere else or is done by other people. It starts in your own neighborhood, with your own hands, making your own community better. The audience applauded enthusiastically, and William joined them, clearly moved by what he had seen. These weren't just feel-good stories. They represented real solutions to complex urban challenges, and they were working because they involved the people most directly affected by environmental problems. Mayor Paes returned to the podium, holding an ornate wooden box that contained the symbolic keys to the city. The keys themselves were works of art, crafted by local artisans from sustainable wood harvested from legally managed forests in the Amazon region. They had been decorated with small gems mined in Brazil and designed to represent both Rio's natural beauty and its cultural richness. "Your Royal Highness," the mayor said, opening the box to reveal the gleaming keys. "These keys represent more than just honorary access to our city. They symbolize our trust in you as a partner in the work we are doing. We invite you to return to Rio not as a visitor, but as someone who belongs here, who understands our challenges and shares our dreams." Prince William rose from his chair and approached the podium, his expression serious but warm. The hall fell silent except for the soft clicking of cameras as photographers captured every moment of the historic ceremony. Outside, crowds that couldn't fit in the building watched on large screens that had been set up in the plaza, their cheers audible even through the thick walls of the city hall. "Mr. Mayor, Dr. Santos, distinguished guests," William began, accepting the ornate box containing the keys, "I am profoundly moved by this honor and by the trust you have placed in me. But more than that, I am inspired by what you have accomplished here in Rio de Janeiro." The prince spoke without notes, his words clearly coming from genuine emotion rather than diplomatic protocol. He had spent hours before the trip studying Rio's environmental and social programs, and his preparation showed in the specificity of his comments. Too often, we talk about environmental protection and social justice as if they are separate issues that compete for our attention and resources. What I have learned about Rio's approach is that you understand they're the same issue, that caring for people and caring for the planet require the same values, the same commitment, and often the same solutions. His words prompted another round of applause, but William continued, building to the heart of his message. "These keys that you have given me represent a responsibility that I accept with great humility. They connect me not just to your beautiful city, but to the ongoing work of building a more sustainable and more just world." The ceremony concluded with the exchange of gifts. Mayor Paes presented William with a painting by a local artist that depicted children from various Rio neighborhoods working together to plant trees along the banks of a cleaned-up river. The artwork was both beautiful and meaningful, representing hope for the future through collaborative action. In return, William presented the mayor with a first-edition book about conservation efforts in British national parks, signed by renowned environmentalists who had influenced the prince's own thinking about conservation. The book was accompanied by a letter from the Prince of Wales expressing his support for Rio's environmental initiatives. As the formal ceremony concluded, guests moved to an adjacent reception hall where traditional Brazilian refreshments were served alongside British tea and biscuits, a culinary symbol of the cultural bridge building that the day represented. Local musicians provided background music, playing a mix of bossa nova classics and contemporary Brazilian compositions. William moved through the crowd, speaking with representatives from various community organizations. Each conversation revealed another layer of Rio's complex social fabric and the innovative approaches being used to address urban challenges. A group of university students explained their research into sustainable urban transportation, while social workers described programs that combined environmental education with job training for young people in underserved communities. The reception also provided opportunities for William to learn about challenges that hadn't been mentioned in the formal presentations. Community leaders spoke frankly about ongoing problems with pollution in some neighborhoods, the difficulties of providing adequate infrastructure to rapidly growing areas, and the constant struggle to balance economic development with environmental protection. These honest conversations impressed William even more than the success stories. The people he met weren't claiming to have solved all their problems, but they were demonstrating the kind of determined, realistic approach to improvement that he had seen work in other parts of the world. As the afternoon progressed, the mood in the reception hall grew increasingly relaxed and celebratory. The formal diplomacy of the ceremony had given way to genuine human connections as people from different backgrounds found common ground in their shared commitment to making Rio a better place to live. One particularly memorable moment occurred when a group of children who had participated in environmental education programs presented William with a hand-drawn map of Rio that highlighted all the places where community conservation projects were taking place. The map was both adorable and informative, showing that even young children understood the scope and importance of the work being done across their city. The K hashtag into the heart of Rio, the afternoon sun, cast long shadows across the streets of Rio as Prince William's convoy departed City Hall for what many considered the most important part of his visit, seeing the community projects firsthand. The symbolic keys to the city now rested in a place of honor in his briefcase, but the real test of their meaning would come in the neighborhoods where ordinary cariocas were working to transform their communities. Their first stop was the Complexo do Alameo, a group of favelas in the north zone of Rio that had undergone remarkable changes in recent years. As the convoy climbed the winding roads into the hillside community, William could see the famous cable car system that connected the area to the rest of the city, an infrastructure project that had literally elevated the community both practically and symbolically. The convoy stopped at a community center that had been built through a partnership between local residents, the city government, and several international nonprofit organizations. The building itself told a story of transformation. What had once been an abandoned warehouse was now a vibrant hub of activity, with solar panels on the roof, gardens growing in every available space, and colorful murals covering the exterior walls. Dozens of residents had gathered to welcome the prince, but this wasn't a formal ceremony like the one at City Hall. Children ran around freely while their parents chatted in small groups, and teenagers demonstrated their skills at a computer training program that occupied one wing of the building. The atmosphere was relaxed, but expectant. These people were excited to share their achievements with someone who they hoped might help bring more attention to their efforts. Maria Conceição, a community leader who had played a key role in establishing the center, greeted William with a warm handshake and an even warmer smile. A grandmother in her 60s who had lived in Complexo do Alameo her entire life. She had witnessed the community's transformation from a place that outsiders feared to visit into a model of urban innovation. "Your Royal Highness," she said in Portuguese, with translation provided by Dr. Ribeiro, "we want to show you that dreams can become reality when people work together." This community center represents thousands of hours of volunteer work and the hopes of families who want better lives for their children. The tour began in the computer lab, where 20 desktop computers provided internet access and digital literacy training to residents who had previously been excluded from the digital economy. William watched as a group of middle-aged women learned to use email and social media to promote small businesses they had started from their homes. Their concentration was intense, and their pride in mastering new skills was evident. In another corner of the lab, teenagers worked on a website they were creating to promote tourism in their community. The site featured walking tours led by local residents, opportunities to purchase handmade crafts, and information about the area's history and culture. What impressed William most was their sophisticated understanding of marketing and their determination to change outside perceptions of their neighborhood. People think favelas are only dangerous places, explained 16-year-old Carlos, one of the website designers. But we want to show them the real story, that we are creative, we are hardworking, and we have beautiful things to share with the world. The next stop was the community garden, a project that had transformed a vacant lot into a productive space that provided fresh vegetables for dozens of families. The garden used innovative techniques like vertical growing systems and rainwater collection to maximize production in a small space. More importantly, it served as a gathering place where neighbors of all ages worked together and children learned about nutrition and environmental stewardship. An elderly man named Joao, who had become the garden's unofficial coordinator, showed William how they composted food scraps from neighborhood restaurants and used the resulting soil to grow herbs that were sold back to the same restaurants. This closed-loop system reduced waste while creating income for community members, exactly the kind of sustainable development that the prince had been advocating for in his environmental work. The earth teaches us patience, Joao explained through a translator, his weathered hands gently holding a tomato plant. You plant, you water, you wait, and eventually you harvest. Building a better community works the same way. Slow, steady work that eventually produces results that feed everyone. Children from the community had prepared a special presentation about their environmental club, which met weekly to work on projects like beach cleanups and tree planting. 8-year-old Ana Sofia served as the group's spokesperson, standing confidently in front of the prince to explain their activities. We clean the beaches because we love the ocean, she said in careful English she had been practicing for weeks. The fish need clean water, and we need the fish. Everything is connected, like my teacher says. Her simple but profound understanding of ecological relationships impressed William, who knelt down at her level and asked about her favorite activities in the environmental club. Ana Sofia's face lit up as she described organizing cleanup events where families work together, turning environmental stewardship into community celebration. The tour continued to a workshop where local artisans created handicrafts from recycled materials. Plastic bottles became planters, old tires were transformed into furniture, and discarded electronics were turned into art installations. The workshop served multiple purposes, reducing waste, creating income opportunities, and providing a creative outlet for community members. Rosa, a single mother who had become skilled at creating jewelry from recycled materials, showed William some of her work. Her earnings from jewelry sales had allowed her to enroll in night school, to complete her education, and she hoped eventually to open a small business that would employ other women from the community. This workshop changed my life, she explained. Before, I saw trash everywhere and felt hopeless. Now I see potential everywhere. Potential to create something beautiful, potential to earn money, potential to help my children have better futures. The prince spent considerable time talking with Rosa and other workshop participants, asking detailed questions about their techniques and their business plans. His genuine interest was obvious, and several participants later commented that they had expected a brief, formal visit, but instead experienced a real conversation with someone who understood the challenges they faced. The community center also housed a small medical clinic staffed by volunteer healthcare workers and visiting medical students. The clinic provided basic healthcare services that were often difficult for community residents to access elsewhere in the city. William met with Dr. Patricia Oliveira, a young physician who had been providing services at the clinic for 2 years. Many of our patients have health problems that are directly related to environmental conditions, Dr. Oliveira explained. Poor air quality, contaminated water, inadequate sanitation. These issues affect everyone, but they hit the poorest communities hardest. Our work here is as much about environmental justice as it is about health care. The clinic had partnered with the environmental education programs to teach families about preventing illness through better sanitation and nutrition. Children learned to recognize symptoms that might indicate environmental health problems and parents received training in basic preventive care. The integrated approach impressed William, who had seen similar programs in other countries, but never implemented quite so comprehensively. As the afternoon progressed, William's planned brief visit extended well beyond the scheduled time. He seemed reluctant to leave, continuing to ask questions and engage in conversations with community members. His security team remained alert but relaxed, recognizing that the genuine warmth of his reception posed no threats. The visit concluded with a gathering in the center's main hall, where community leaders presented William with a photo album documenting the transformation of Complexo do Alameo over the past decade. Before and after pictures showed the dramatic changes, abandoned lots becoming gardens, deteriorating buildings being renovated, and streets that had once been dangerous becoming safe spaces where children played freely. But the most powerful images were the portraits of community members at work. Teachers leading classes, gardeners tending plants, artisans creating beautiful objects, healthcare workers caring for patients, and children learning and playing in safe environments. These photographs captured the human stories behind the statistics about urban development. William's response was emotional and personal. Standing in front of the assembled community, he spoke without the formal protocol that had characterized his earlier speeches. "I came here today to see your projects," he said, "but what I have discovered is something much more important, a community of people who refuse to accept that circumstances define possibilities. You have shown me that transformation is possible when people commit to working together for common goals." The crowd responded with enthusiastic applause, but William continued, his voice growing stronger. "The keys to your city that Mayor Paes gave me today. I realize now that you are the ones who truly hold those keys. You are the ones who are unlocking Rio's potential, one project, one family, one child at a time." As he prepared to leave Complexo do Alameo, William was surrounded by children asking for selfies and adults shaking his hand and expressing their gratitude for his visit. Many had prepared small gifts, handmade items from the workshop, vegetables from the garden, drawings created by children in the art classes. The convoy began its journey to the next stop, but William's mind remained focused on what he had just experienced. The visit had confirmed his belief that sustainable development must be community-driven to be successful, but it had also shown him innovative approaches that could be adapted for similar challenges in other parts of the world. As the vehicles descended from the hillside community, William could see the contrast between the favela and the wealthy neighborhoods below, but he had also witnessed proof that those contrasts didn't have to define the future. In Complexo do Alameo, he had met people who were building bridges across economic and social divides through their commitment to collective action and shared prosperity. # a day that changed everything. The golden hour approached as Prince William's convoy made its final stop of the day at Praia Vermelha, a small beach nestled between the neighborhoods of Copacabana and Ipanema. This wasn't just any beach visit. It was the location of Rio's most ambitious marine conservation project, and it would provide a fitting conclusion to a day that had exceeded everyone's expectations. The beach itself was relatively small compared to Rio's famous stretches of sand, but its protected cove made it ideal for marine research and education programs. A temporary pavilion had been erected on the beach, decorated with banners displaying the logos of various environmental organizations and research institutions that were collaborating on the conservation project. Dr. Rafael Costa, a marine biologist from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, waited with his team to show William the underwater research station that had been monitoring the health of Guanabara Bay for the past 3 years. The project represented exactly the kind of scientific approach to environmental protection that the prince had been advocating for through his own charitable work. As William stepped onto the sand, he was immediately struck by the clarity of the water in the protected cove. This was a dramatic contrast to other parts of Guanabara Bay, where decades of industrial pollution and inadequate waste treatment had severely damaged marine ecosystems. The improvement here was visible proof that restoration efforts could succeed with sustained commitment and proper resources. "Your Royal Highness," Dr. Costa began, What you see here is the result of 5 years of intensive cleanup efforts combined with ongoing monitoring and community education. We have documented the return of fish species that hadn't been seen in these waters for over 20 years. The research team had prepared an underwater viewing platform that allowed visitors to observe marine life without disturbing the ecosystem. William descended into the clear water wearing snorkeling gear, accompanied by Dr. Costa and 2 graduate students who had been working on the restoration project. Under the surface, the transformation was even more remarkable. Coral formations that had been bleached and dying just a few years earlier now teemed with colorful fish. Sea turtles, once rare visitors to the bay, had returned in significant numbers. Schools of small fish created silver clouds that moved in perfect synchronization through the clean water. The water quality improvements have exceeded our most optimistic projections, Dr. Costa explained through the underwater communication system. But the real success is that this ecosystem is now self-sustaining. The marine life is reproducing naturally, and the biological systems are maintaining the environmental improvements we helped establish. William spent nearly 30 minutes underwater, observing the marine life and asking detailed questions about the restoration techniques. His enthusiasm was evident to everyone present. This wasn't diplomatic politeness, but genuine fascination with the scientific and environmental achievements he was witnessing. Back on the beach, the research team had prepared displays showing before and after photographs of the restoration area, along with scientific data documenting improvements in water quality, marine biodiversity, and ecosystem health. The transformation was measurable and dramatic, a success story that could provide a model for similar projects around the world. But the most impressive aspect of the project wasn't just the environmental improvements, it was the community involvement that had made those improvements possible. Local fishermen had been trained as environmental monitors, helping to track changes in fish populations and water quality. Their traditional knowledge of the bay's ecosystem had been combined with modern scientific methods to create more effective conservation strategies. Antonio Silva, a fisherman whose family had worked these waters for 4 generations, spoke with William about the changes he had witnessed. His weathered face showed deep lines from decades of sun and salt water, but his eyes were bright with enthusiasm as he described the return of fish species his grandfather had told him about, but he had never expected to see. When I was young, my grandfather would tell stories about the abundance of fish in the bay. Antonio explained through a translator. I thought they were just old man's tales, exaggerated memories of better times. Now I see he was telling the truth. The bay can support life like it used to, but only if we take care of it properly. The fishermen had become passionate advocates for the conservation project, understanding that environmental protection directly benefited their livelihoods. They had organized themselves into a cooperative that promoted sustainable fishing practices and provided educational tours for visitors who wanted to learn about marine conservation. William was particularly interested in the educational component of the project. Local schools brought students to the beach regularly for hands-on learning about marine ecosystems. Children who had grown up seeing the bay as polluted and lifeless were now learning to appreciate its potential for beauty and biodiversity. A group of 10-year-olds from a nearby school had prepared a presentation about their role in the conservation project. They had been monitoring water quality, tracking wildlife sightings, and even participating in beach cleanups that removed tons of plastic waste from the shoreline. "We are the guardians of the bay," explained Louisa, a confident 4th grader who served as spokesperson for her class. "Our teacher says that protecting the ocean is our job because we will live here longer than the adults. We have to make sure the fish have a safe home so they will still be here when we are grown up." The children's understanding of their environmental responsibilities impressed William deeply. They weren't just learning about conservation as an abstract concept, they were actively participating in restoration efforts and seeing the results of their work. This hands-on approach to environmental education was creating a generation of young people who understood the connection between human actions and ecological health. As the sun began to set over the bay, casting orange and pink reflections on the calm water, the formal part of William's visit concluded with a brief ceremony on the beach. Mayor Paes, who had joined the group for this final event, presented the prince with a piece of art created from materials that had been removed from the bay during cleanup efforts. The sculpture, created by a local artist named Fernando Reis, transformed plastic waste and metal debris into a beautiful representation of a sea turtle. The piece was both beautiful and meaningful, a symbol of transformation that turned environmental damage into artistic inspiration while highlighting the conservation success that had brought real sea turtles back to the bay. This sculpture represents our belief that destruction can become creation, that waste can become beauty, and that despair can become hope, Mayor Paes explained as he presented the artwork to William. We hope it will remind you of what you have seen here in Rio and inspire others to believe that positive change is possible. William accepted the sculpture with visible emotion, understanding that it represented much more than just an artistic gift. It symbolized the entire day's journey through a city that was actively transforming itself through community action, scientific innovation, and unwavering commitment to a better future. As the beach ceremony concluded, William took a moment to walk alone along the waterline, his feet in the gentle waves that lapped against the restored shoreline. The keys to the city in his briefcase, the sculpture in his hands, and the memories of the day in his heart all represented different aspects of the same remarkable story. A city that refused to accept limitations and was creating its own version of progress. The convoy that took William back to his hotel was quieter than the morning's journey into the city. The prince spent the drive looking out at the lights beginning to twinkle across Rio's landscape, processing everything he had experienced. The official purpose of his visit, receiving honorary citizenship, had been accomplished, but the real value of the day lay in the relationships he had formed and the inspiration he had received. In his hotel suite that evening, William spent several hours writing personal notes to the people he had met during the day. He wrote to Maria Conceição about the community center's impressive programs, to Dr. Costa about the marine conservation project's potential for replication in other locations, and to Mayor Paes about the possibility of establishing ongoing partnerships between Rio and British environmental organizations. But perhaps the most meaningful note was the one he wrote to Ana Sofia, the 8-year-old who had explained her environmental club's beach cleanup activities. He drew a simple picture of the sea turtle sculpture alongside his written message, hoping to encourage her continued interest in conservation work. The keys to Rio de Janeiro now rested in a place of honor among William's most treasured possessions, but their true significance went far beyond their symbolic value. They represented admission to a global community of people who were proving that environmental and social challenges could be addressed through determination, innovation, and collaborative action. As he prepared for sleep in his Rio hotel room, William reflected on the day's most powerful lesson. The environmental and social problems facing cities around the world were indeed daunting, but the solutions he had witnessed in Rio proved that progress was possible when communities took ownership of their challenges and worked together toward common goals. The prince's visit to Rio had begun as a diplomatic gesture and ceremonial honor, but it had evolved into something much more significant, a masterclass in community-based development and a demonstration that hope could be transformed into measurable progress through sustained effort and shared commitment. Outside his window, the lights of Rio continued to twinkle like stars reflected in Guanabara Bay, where sea turtles now swam in clean water, and children grew up believing that they could be guardians of both their community and their planet. The keys to the city had been officially presented, but the real keys to transformation lay in the hearts and hands of the Cariocas who had welcomed a British prince and shown him that the future could be brighter than the past. The grins that photographers had captured during the key ceremony told only part of the story. The deeper truth was that William's smile reflected genuine admiration for his city and its people who had proven that dreams backed by determination could indeed become reality. Rio de Janeiro had given him much more than honorary citizenship. It had given him renewed faith in the power of human community to create positive change. Eyes to the city now belonged to Prince William, but the real significance of the day lay in the relationships that have been formed and strengthened. As he prepared to leave City Hall for the next portion of his Rio visit, William carried with him not just honorary citizenship, but a deeper understanding of how dedicated people could create positive change even in the face of seemingly overwhelming challenges.